This is week 2, and thank you for getting this course off to a good start. I think the discussions were great, and everybody's doing their assignments, and I appreciate that. I'm going to summarize some things from week 1 and week 2. You may need to stop and pause and take some notes on some things. First of all, let's distinguish between civil law and criminal law. Civil law is basically a dispute between individuals. It could also involve corporations. Let's say that someone rents an apartment and at the end of the lease, the landlord refuses to give them their deposit back, and the person then has to sue. That would be an example of civil law. What we're going to talk about is criminal law. That's an offense against society. And the legislature, the governor, and the courts are all involved. Briefly, the legislature will pass or create and pass the proposed criminal law. Governor will sign it, and then the governor becomes the chief executive that's responsible for enforcing criminal law. Also, and we'll talk in much more detail about our local district attorneys in the counties that are responsible in each particular county. The judges interpret the law, and as they interpret the law, it explains the law, makes new law. Let me give you 2 examples. Let's say the legislature creates a law that says only motor vehicles are allowed on the highway, and someone goes on a motorcycle, and a policeman gives them a ticket, and then the question is a motorcycle a motor vehicle? So a judge might look at it, and I want you to think about it. Well, what would be an idea that makes it, what would make it a motor vehicle? Well, you think it has an engine, and it's a vehicle, takes someone, transports someone from place to place. All right, it's registered with the state, and you have to have a license to drive it. So I think in any case like this, a judge would say that a motorcycle is a motor vehicle. And that's how the law would come about. We would know that trucks and Winnebagos and so on are motor vehicles. So let's suppose somebody takes their John Deere tractor on the interstate for a 2-mile-an-hour ride. Okay, a judge would look at that and say, that's not a motor vehicle. And what would they look at? They would look at all the things I just mentioned that describe a motor vehicle, and they might have to look at what's the intent of the legislature to protect public safety, and they would go into an analysis of why a lawnmower on the interstate would not be a motor vehicle. And that's how the law develops. Now, if the legislature wanted the lawnmower to be a motor vehicle, they could redefine motor vehicle and include it. And then everybody would know how to act. Another example would be there is a law, and we'll talk about mandatory sentences closer to the middle to the end of the course, that says if someone sells drugs within 1,000 feet of a school, that there's a mandatory minimum sentence. They have to spend a certain amount of time in jail. All right. So one of the first cases, and it came to my court, one of the first cases was a defense lawyer said, well, my client was found selling drugs near a track and field owned by a school. But the track and field was 2 miles from the school building. Therefore, my client should not get the mandatory 5 years in jail because it was not within 1,000 feet of a school building. So then the court has to decide, well, what did the legislature want to do here? Did they mean 1,000 feet of the school administration building where the classes were? So think about that for a minute. What was the intent of the legislature? And what we decided was the intent of the legislature was to protect school children from drug dealers on school property, not just the school building. So we made it the law, we interpreted the law that the 1,000 feet was from school property. And actually, the legislature later on went on to amend it to make it clear, to make the law clear that it was school property. So that's how the law is made and interpreted. A crime is an offense against society. The difference in civil and criminal law is that in civil law, you don't have to prove as much to win your case. You have to think of a balance thing. And if you tilt the scale only a little bit, you've given the jury enough to win your case. But as you know from just general knowledge and television, in criminal law, you have to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's much higher standard. Reasonable doubt is something to the effect that if you would pause or hesitate from acting in your own affairs, then that would be reasonable doubt.